This game of Commander is brought to you by Spikeweaver and Vorinclex. Bribery. Prophet of Crewfix, Survival of the Fittest, Dead Eye Navigator. I think you're just going to have to watch it. Welcome to a special edition of Clonehead Commander featuring our first ever game of Emperor. There is a tutorial on how to play Emperor at the end of this video if you are unfamiliar with how to play. Check it out first here if you need to before watching this video. In this game of Emperor, the team on the bottom of your screen is led by Maelstrom Wanderer, with Omnath, Locus of Mana as its left general, and Sheoldred Whispering One as the right general. Their opponent is Prime Speaker Zegana as the Emperor on the top of your screen, with Ghave, Guru of Spores as the general to the left of Zegana, and Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker as the right general. Prime Speaker Zegana wins the die roll and makes Maelstrom Wanderer's team go first. Omnath starts with an opening hand of Misty Rainforest, Wooded Foothills, Crucible of Worlds, Jiraga Treespeaker, Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, Indrik Stomp Howler, and Caged Sun. Next, in turn order, Kiki-Jiki starts with an opening hand of Crucible of Worlds, Manic Vandal, Sword of Fire and Ice, Rack and Ruin, Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, and 2 Snow Mountains. Zegana starts with an opening hand of Sol Ring, Copy Artifact, Spikeweaver, Farseek, Forest, and 2 Islands. Ghave starts with an opening hand of Craterhoof Behemoth, Wrath of God, Demonic Tutor, Woodland Cemetery, Corrosion Verge, Verdant Catacombs, and Selesnya Sanctuary. Next we have Sheoldred with an opening hand of Slum Reaper, Night's Whisper, Bone Shredder, Crypt of Agadim, Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, and 2 Swamps. And finally is Maelstrom Wanderer, who keeps an opening hand of Mana Crypt, Rampant Growth, Explore, Wooded Foothills, Tropical Island, Gruul Turf, and Temple of the False God. Omnath starts the game by drawing Ranger's Path and playing Misty Rainforest. Omnath breaks the Rainforest and puts regular forest onto the battlefield, and then casts Jiraga Treespeaker. Kiki-Jiki draws Caged Sun and plays Valakut the Molten Pinnacle from hand. Zegana draws Bribery and plays Island and casts Sol Ring. Ghave draws Austere Command and plays Corrosion Verge. Sheoldred draws Swamp and plays Crypt of Agadim. Wanderer draws Trinket Mage and plays Tropical Island, and then casts Mana Crypt and Trinket Mage, finding Sol Ring and adding it to hand. Omnath draws Sol Ring and plays Wooded Foothills and sacrifices it to find a forest, paying 1 life, putting it onto the battlefield. Omnath then levels up Jiraga Treespeaker to level 1 and then taps it for 2 mana, casting Sol Ring and Crucible of Worlds. Kiki-Jiki draws Snow Mountain and plays Snow Mountain. Zegana draws Island, plays Forest, and casts Copy Artifact, copying Sol Ring, and then casts Farseek, putting Breeding Pool onto the battlefield. Ghave untaps and plays Verdant Catacombs, paying 1 life and sacking it to find Bayou, putting it onto the battlefield. Ghave plays Demonic Tutor, finding Sol Ring and adding it to hand. Sheoldred draws Sepulchral Primordial and plays Swamp. Sheoldred casts Night's Whisper, drawing 2 cards and losing 2 life. At the end of turn, Sheoldred discards Sepulchral Primordial. Maelstrom Wanderer loses 2 life at the beginning of its upkeep to Mana Crypt and then draws Farseek. Wanderer plays and sacks Wooded Foothills, paying 1 life and finding Taiga, putting it onto the battlefield. Wanderer then casts Sol Ring and casts Farseek, putting Steam Vents onto the battlefield, and Rampant Growth, putting Forest onto the battlefield. Wanderer marches Trinket Mage to Sheoldred's board. Omnath untaps and draws Terastodon. Omnath plays Wooded Foothills from the graveyard and then sacks it, paying 1 life and putting a forest onto the battlefield. Omnath then taps 6 mana and casts Caged Sun, naming green. Omnath then levels Jiraga Treespeaker 1 more time. Kiki-Jiki draws Snow Mountain, plays it, and then casts Rack and Ruin, blowing up Omnath's Caged Sun and Crucible of Worlds. Zegana plays Island and casts Bribery, targeting Omnath, stealing its Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, putting it onto the battlefield under Zegana's control, affecting Sheoldred and Omnath. Ghave draws Kodama's Reach and plays Woodland Cemetery and casts Soul Ring. Ghave then activates Corrosion Verge, binding Godly Shrine and Temple Garden and putting them onto the battlefield. Sheoldred draws Shriekmaw and plays Swamp. Sheoldred attacks Ghave for 2 with the Trinket Mage and then casts Blood Artist. Sheoldred's lands won't untap next turn due to Vorinclex's effect. Maelstrom Wanderer draws Izzet Boilerworks and casts a turn 3 Maelstrom Wanderer, which is pretty good. Cascading into Rite of Replication, copying Trinket Mage. The Trinket Mage token finds Sensei's Divine Top and puts it into Wanderer's hand. Wanderer next cascades into Temporal Manipulation, taking an extra turn after this one. Wanderer plays Temple of the False God and casts Sensei's Divine Top and uses it to look at and rearrange the top 2 cards of its library. On the next turn, Wanderer draws Inferno Titan and casts it, dealing 3 damage to Ghave. Wanderer casts Explore, and with Explore on the stack, activates top to look at and rearrange the top 2 cards, drawing a land. Wanderer plays Izzet Boilerworks and Cement Growth Chamber, returning 2 lands to hand. Wanderer marches all 3 creatures to Omnath's board. Omnath untaps and draws Tooth and Nail. Omnath attacks Kiki-Jiki with Trinket Mage, Inferno Titan, and Maelstrom Wanderer, dealing Kiki-Jiki 18 damage. Omnath casts Ranger's Path, finding 2 forests and putting them onto the battlefield tapped. Omnath doesn't tap any lands, so they won't be affected by Vorinclex. Kiki-Jiki draws and casts Manic Vandal. When it enters, it blows up Omnath's Soul Ring. Zegana untaps and draws Survival of the Fittest. Zegana plays Island and casts Genesis Wave for 11, putting Hinterland Harbor, Terramorphic Expanse, Forest, Misty Rainforest, Overbeing of Myth, Diluvian Primordial, Sword of Feast and Famine, and Eternal Witness onto the battlefield. Eternal Witness returns Praetor's Council to hand when it enters. Diluvian Primordial casts Night's Whisper out of Sheoldred's graveyard, drawing Zegana 2 cards and losing 2 life, and Ranger's Path out of Omnath's graveyard, exiling both cards and giving Zegana 2 forests. Expanse gets Zegana another forest. Zegana then casts Spikeweaver, which comes into play with 3 +1 counters on it. Ghave untaps, draws Birds of Paradise, and casts Kodama's Reach, finding Swamp Plains. Ghave casts Birds of Paradise and Sylvan Library, and then plays Selesnya Sanctuary, bouncing Swamp back to hand. Sheoldred untaps all but 2 lands and then draws Demonic Tutor. Sheoldred plays Swamp and invokes Shriekmaw, killing both it and Ghave's Birds of Paradise, losing Ghave 2 life and gaining Sheoldred 2 life with Blood Artist's effect. Sheoldred then attacks Ghave for 2 more damage with Trinket Mage. Maelstrom Wanderer untaps and draws Forest, which gets played. Wanderer looks with the top and then replaces the top card of its library with it. Wanderer casts Jace the Mind Sculptor to draw 3 cards and then put 2 back. Wanderer recasts Sensei's Divine Top. Omnath untaps everything and draws and plays Forest. Omnath attacks Kiki-Jiki with Wanderer, Trinket Mage, and Inferno Titan. The Titan deals 2 damage to Manic Vandal and 1 damage to Kiki-Jiki. Before combat damage, Zegana breaks Misty Rainforest, finding and putting Forest onto the battlefield. Zegana removes a +1 counter from Spikeweaver and prevents all combat damage that would be dealt this turn, fogging the battlefield. Before passing, Omnath gets cast from the command zone. Kiki-Jiki draws Invader Parasite and plays Snow Mountain, and then casts Invader Parasite, exiling one of Omnath's forests. Zegana untaps and draws 2 cards due to Overbeing of Myth. Zegana plays Forest and casts Survival of the Fittest. Zegana activates Survival, pitching Somberworld Sage to get Consecrated Sphinx, pitching it to get Prophet of Krufix for Phyrexian Metamorph for Gilded Drake. Zegana casts Praetor's Council, returning its graveyard to hand. Zegana casts Prophet of Crucifix and Consecrated Sphinx. Zegana equips Overbeing a Myth with Sword of Feast and Famine, and then marches Diluvian Primordial, Overbeing, and Eternal Witness to Kiki-Jiki. Ghave untaps along with Zegana. Ghave draws 2 extra cards with Sullivan, but paying no extra life with the enchantment, drawing Serra Ascendant and plays Plains, then casts Serra Ascendant and its commander. Ghave passes the turn, and at the end of turn, Zegana pitches Somberworld Sage to Survival to get Avenger of Zendikar and add to hand. Zegana then casts Avenger of Zendikar, making 12 0/1 plant tokens. Zegana then pitches Phyrexian Metamorph to find and cast Regal Force, drawing 17 mini cards. Zegana discards Trinket Mage, getting Deadeye Navigator and casting it, pairing it with Avenger of Zendikar. Sheoldred untaps 2 of its lands, while Zegana untaps all of its lands. Doesn't seem fair, does it? Sheoldred draws Big Game Hunter and plays Urborg to Yawgmoth and casts Demonic Tutor for Sol Ring and then casts it. Sheoldred is done with its turn, but Zegana isn't. Zegana blinks Avenger of Zendikar 10 times and makes over 100 plant tokens. Maelstrom Wanderer alone untaps and draws Explosive Vegetation. Jace brainstorms, putting 2 lands back, and then casts Explosive Vegetation, finding Island Forest and putting them onto the battlefield. Wanderer replaces the top card of its library with Top. Wanderer plays Cascade Bluffs and then casts Urabrask the Hidden. Since Omnath's creatures already have haste, Wanderer sends Urabrask to Sheoldred's board instead. Omnath and Zegana untap at the beginning of Omnath's turn. Omnath draws and plays Forest and then declares its attack phase. In response, Zegana flashes in Gilded Drake, taking Inferno Titan and Sower of Temptation, taking Maelstrom Wanderer. Zegana then casts Cyclonic Rift, bouncing Omnath's and Sheoldred's non-land permanents, and returning Gilded Drake to Zegana's hand. Omnath recasts Draga Treespeaker and levels it up once and recasts Omnath. At the end of Omnath's turn, Zegana blinks Deadeye Navigator, and when it comes back, pairs it with Inferno Titan, and then blinks the Titan. When the Titan enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to the Treespeaker and 1 damage to Omnath, killing both creatures. Kiki-Jiki draws 2 cards, Slagstorm and Ward's Foothills, and plays Mountain, and casts Sword of Fire and Ice, equipping it to Eternal Witness. Kiki-Jiki attacks with everyone, dealing Omnath 20 damage. Kiki-Jiki draws from the Sword of Fire and Ice and untaps its lands. Omnath discards Kozilek, Butcher of Truth to the Sword of Feast and Famine, reshuffling it into its library along with its graveyard. Kiki-Jiki casts Caged Sun, naming Red. At the end of Kiki-Jiki's turn, Zegana blinks Inferno Titan 10 more times, dealing 30 damage between Omnath and Sheoldred, but being careful not to kill Omnath so that it doesn't exile Vorinclex, which is working wonders right now for Zegana. Zegana draws Genesis and plays Misty Rainforest, pumping the plants, finding Island, paying 1 life, pumping the plants again. Zegana casts Akroma's Memorial. Zegana blinks Inferno Titan enough more times to kill Sheoldred and Omnath, and then marches all of its creatures to Ghave's field. Ghave untaps and draws Ghostly Prison. Ghave then casts Craterhoof Behemoth and attacks Maelstrom Wanderer for well over 10,000 damage, winning the game for Team Prime Speaker Zegana. Here's a quick tutorial on Emperor. Emperor is a 6-player game with 2 teams, seated across from each other, with the Emperors seated in the middle, and the Generals seated on the sides. The game is over when one side's Emperor is dead. Unlike traditional games, the difference with Emperor that makes it unique is that players have play ranges. Players can only attack and target players adjacent to them within their play range. For example, the generals have a play range of 1, meaning their spells only work on the players immediately to that player's left and right. Emperors, since they are more powerful, have a play range of 2, meaning they can affect everyone on the field with the exception of the other team's Emperor. Global effects, such as Wrath of God, will only kill creatures within the play range of its caster. However, if one of the generals dies, that means that both Emperors will be able to interact with each other, since they are 2 play spaces away from each other at that point. Another unique mechanic to Emperor is marching. Players can march creatures from their play spaces to the adjacent allied play space. When the creatures march to a new play space, they are controlled by the player whose play space they are currently in. Marching can only be done whenever that player may play a sorcery and requires the creatures to be free of summoning sickness and untapped. Marching will tap the creature. Also, creatures who do march to new territory will still have summoning sickness for an extra turn after the turn they enter the new field, unless they have haste from another effect. For a more in-depth tutorial on the format, check out the link in the video description below to the Wizards page on Emperor. Thanks for watching.